Welcome back. An international manhunt is on for suspected killer Luca Magnotta. But many questions still exist about the days leading up to the gruesome discovery of body parts. A lawyer in Montana tried to warn Toronto police and the FBI of the video allegedly depicting the murder. But he says he was met with a cold shoulder. For more on the global search for Magnotta and whether Toronto police should release the recording of their conversation with the lawyer in Montana, Bill Gavin joins us. Mr. Gavin is the former assistant director of the FBI in New York City and is with us via Skype in Boston. Good morning, Mr. Gavin.
Good morning, Brian. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you. First and foremost, thanks for taking the time. But I guess the one question that jumps out right off the top is this. Are the police under any obligation, either north of the 49th here in Toronto or even in your city, New York, to release tapes of this nature upon request?
I suspect that they will entertain the request, but as the prior information on the program has stated, it may take them some time to honor the request or reject it. Whether or not the conversation between the attorney in Montana and the police department in Toronto is a fair representation of what they both say is anybody's guess. The thing that I look at, though, is if an individual calls who's unknown, you don't know who the individual is, that's one thing. But now we get a Montana attorney, a professional, who's calling and saying, I don't know if it's real or not, it looks real to me. I would think that the inquisitive nature of law enforcement would say, would you please send it to me so that we can help make that determination? I guess that's probably what I would have done.
Mr. Gavin, that's a line of inquiry I'd like to pursue with you for a bit longer then. Let's imagine that during the course of this call, the lawyer from Montana did reveal that he is, in fact, an officer of the court, as all lawyers are. Wouldn't that put a little more, I don't know, veracity onto his statement and make the police want to check into this a little bit further or pass it up the chain of command?
Absolutely. I think that you now know that you're dealing with an officer of court. You now know that you're dealing with somebody who's versed in law enforcement, in the problems that exist when a film like this, a video, comes online. And for him to tell the authorities, look, this is who I am, and based on the conversation that you folks have had with him, during which he said, I don't know if this is true or not true, but it looks good to me. I think a professional should look at it. That would lend even more credibility, I would think, to the request for somebody to look at it.
We've got a lot of territory I'd like to cover with you, so I'm going to transition to I guess the alleged perpetrator of these crimes, Luca Magnotta. He's gone on record as, I guess, detailing what it takes to disappear, vanish off the face of the earth. You have some expertise in this area. Can you tell us, is this even possible in this day and age?
Well, it's possible for a certain amount of time. Look at the what has happened in the past with the terrorism suspects. Mm-hmm. I know in 1993 we were lucky; we caught them all within 2 years. But you can vanish for quite some time if you prepare ahead of time. If you understand how you can hide in plain sight. Sometimes those are all the things you have to know. And this kid seems to have lived on the edge of maybe insanity or huge criminal activity for a long time, so maybe was versed in how to do something like this.
Well, just to follow up on that then, have you seen anything in your, I guess, perusal of this case that indicates that this suspect has that ability, has, I guess, the intellect to accomplish this?
I don't know much about him, regarding intellect, and that would be a rather difficult thing to say. But if he mixed with criminal element on the street, he's that close to the border, and perhaps he has had the ability to get identities of individuals other than himself and secure passports or whatever travel documents he may need. That could be a possibility that he just fell into and he exploited.
I want to look at the fact that this has now become a global manhunt because police believe he did leave our country. Speaking from, I guess, the police investigative aspects of this, is it possible for authorities in other countries to track down someone, I guess, who's really, I don't want to say adept, but trying to cover up his tracks? How would they go about doing that?
Well, first of all, if Canadian authorities have some idea of what name he used in passport as he left the country, there's a strong indication that that'll pop up on the grid someplace in whatever country he went to. I guess in this particular case, there's some indication that he went to France. They have, on all these areas and airports now where you look at public documents, where customs and whatnot take a peek at the document and to let you into the country, there are cameras all over the place. And so if they had some idea what flight he was on, if they had some idea when he went, they would search every camera that they had going through those kinds of checkpoints to determine whether or not they found him. Even if they didn't have the exact flight that he was on, they'd have to do an exhaustive search to see if they could come up with a face on the camera.
One last question in the same vein as the previous question, Mr. Gavin. How possible is it for someone, I guess, who's got multiple identities to go back and forth across international borders? Is that feasible, that can be accomplished these days?
Yes, it is, particularly if you're left under one name and the authorities had a suspicion you were using that name, and then you used another name, another passport, and came back in again. A little difficult to trace unless authorities had the names and identities on all of the passports. And again, borders these days are so porous that it's not the most difficult thing in the world to go from one country to another, particularly in North America. And in countries where you don't need visas, it's probably not as difficult using false documentation as well.
Sir, I appreciate you taking time to speak with us, and I also appreciate you lending your expertise to this case for us.
Brian, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's former Assistant Director for the FBI in New York, Bill Gavin, joining us via Skype from Boston.